let's see. Let's go back to the 1970s when John Ivey did some of the original work on glycogen repletion. I mean, some of the most important work in our field.
I agree.
And issues of timing, carbohydrate timing, protein timing. Now we just call it nutrient timing.
No, we don't. No. Well, you're right. We do, but it's such the wrong term for the way most people talk about it. I would agree with you.
And it's gone through these weird evolutions of it's important, it's not important, it's important, sometimes it's important. Give us your thoughts on this, because I think you've done a really good job explaining this to people who otherwise aren't familiar with the data.
So when we look at the Ivy work, right, and it's funny because people called it the anabolic window, but if you actually look at Ivy's original work, it was the metabolic window, right? And so the idea was in that time period following exercise, especially resistance exercise, there was an opportunity due to GLUT4 activity, due to changes in substrate flux, where you had a prime window to more optimally refuel and replenish glycogen, right? That still holds. That doesn't mean that other nutrients wouldn't fit in there too. And so we started looking at the effects of amino acids, the effects of proteins, and lo and behold, it further stimulates protein synthesis following exercise. So then people started to look at that, and is nutrient timing, is this anabolic window a myth? Is it whatever? And I would say, to kind of skip ahead a little bit, yeah, I've come to appreciate the fact that it's far less an anabolic window and far more a garage door. A garage door of opportunity is the way I look at it. And so what started to happen is the question started to become, do we have to? Do we really need to feed right after exercise, or can you wait? Now, from a theoretical standpoint, fairly interesting question. Does it make a huge difference? Okay, fine. So unfortunately, and by the way, I should say there are very few nutrient timing studies, very few, especially on protein. What's happened though is nutrient timing or protein timing meta-analyses have been done on non-timing studies. There's probably 2 or 3 true timing studies. Anyway, when you look at those, they're a bit mixed, but interestingly enough, the Cribb and Hayes study that kind of forms the basis for our understanding of this was the only one that used both carbs and protein, right? And then the other one by Jay Hoffman, they just used protein and didn't see as much of an effect here. Okay, so maybe the macronutrient profile matters in this case. But what started to happen is they came out, they said, oh, look, when we look at the data, it really doesn't matter. But the other problem too, it really has more to do with total protein in a day. Fair. It does. I mean, you can time the hell out of your post-workout shake. If you're not eating the rest of the day, guess what? It's a drop in the bucket. So yeah, intuitively that makes sense, and that's fine. And it can give us some information. What started to happen though, is I started to see strength coaches online go, yeah, I knew this was bogus. I now tell my athletes, don't eat after your workout because it doesn't do you any good. I'm like, whoa. No, that's not what that says. And so the reality was, if you ate hours after your workout, especially protein, it would still have a synthetic effect in terms of protein turnover and muscle building, as long as you had enough protein in a day. Here's the problem though, when you get outside of just working with novice exercisers, which most of those studies were, by the way, right? In that case, by far, the greatest stimulus is going to be the training. By far, it's not going to be the diet. Right? You could just look at a weight when you haven't been doing anything and something will change. Yep. So that's hard. But when you actually work with athletes and you do stuff in a performance realm, even including special operators and tactical athletes and stuff like that, wrestlers, fighters, all that stuff, the reality is, why in the world wouldn't you fit that extra feeding in if you could and take advantage of that window for replenishment, especially if you have to train again the following day? Or in the case of Tony's fighters, you got to train again that day. Right? You got 2 and 3 sessions a day. You can't wait 24 hours for muscle glycogen and stuff like that. So, and the other part too, is with higher protein needs in these athletes, as we've all attested to, and even the people that are basically saying it doesn't matter, acknowledge like the protein intake in a day matters. There's only so many opportunities to fit that in. And if you have a fairly long training session as an athlete, it's probably been 3 or 4 hours since you last ate before you do this. So eat after. Does it mean you have to be slamming that shake as you walk off the field? No, but I will tell you this from a practical standpoint, especially working with college athletes. If you don't reinforce that behavior and make it easy for them to replenish as they're walking off the pitch or off the court, They then go to class, go do other stuff, and they literally forget to eat.
Hours.
So building that habit of replenishment is never a bad thing. And so I think we bastardized the concept, unfortunately. And I think that we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. And the reality is, if you had a workout, you realize you forgot your protein and carb shake after, and you got to drive home now, you're okay. Like, you're not going to die. It's, you can just eat when you get home. However, there is no downside to replenishing after. As a matter of fact, if anything, there's just upside. But again, if we take a very narrow view of nutrient timing and just limit it to protein, yeah, it's a little less clear. I still look at it as an opportunity, because now I have that many more hours to fit in protein feedings when my synthetic rate would be higher and I can metabolize this. Certainly from a carbohydrate standpoint, though, it's important. But to do that and to look at the relevance of that, we've got to get outside of just weightlifting. Weightlifting is not particularly carb depleting. 30%, 50% maybe. Play a soccer match. You can look at Bank Saltine's classic data, where they saw as much as a 96% decline in muscle glycogen. You got to feed, man. You got to feed the machine when you're done, because otherwise you're not going to turn around and do this again. I think from a timing standpoint, that's where it matters to me.
Right. Shawn, to your point on, like, I had my soccer athletes had a long game Friday night and they're playing again Sunday morning.
Yep, exactly.
Under those circumstances, I mean, if you do everything right, it's going to be hard to get back everything you need.
And
after
I would
a 90-minute soccer or game, right? So,
yeah.
To your point, I always remember your 4 words. Why would you wait?
Right.
If you're an athlete, why would you wait?
It just doesn't make sense. And even if you look at, I think some of James E. Morton's work on carb restricted training, right, where they don't fully feed after a training session and then they do work in the morning in a carb restricted state. Okay, maybe that, because you don't always want to train in an optimal situation. But what people forget about that work is the only time they actually saw a performance benefit is when they still fed protein before that morning's workout. When they did this. So they didn't fully replenish carbs, but they still fed. Any of the studies where they completely trained fasted, they saw mitochondrial upregulation and biogenesis, but no effects on performance. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until they fed the protein. And by the way, they didn't do it every day. So I see some athletes are like, well, in coaches, they catch on that, just train in a restricted state because you get better. And they do it every day. And I will tell you what, if you're doing it in a skill sport, you're an idiot, because now you're risking injury. Right? That is a bad idea. Go for a run or on a bike, different story. Now having to cut, go up for a header, get hit in the face, stuff like that. Like, you're trying to dodge some stuff, man. I would want my reaction time a little bit better than that. Yeah.
And just to say a risk of injury increase, as you said, and a definite decline in motor skill application.
Sure.
Yeah.
And look, like I said, we don't always want to train in an optimal state. I mean, there's times where you train and embrace the suck, right? And but at the end of the day, you want to compete in an optimal state, right? And no matter what you do, is even if you train in a suboptimal state, you do want to try to optimize recovery after the bulk of that training cycle in terms of what you're trying to do and within it as well. So yeah, again, why would you wait? And it just doesn't make sense. And so for me, nutrient timing is one of those things where what you eat in the day, your overall diet and strategy and your training, especially, that's the cake, man. That's the basic formula. The icing starts to become the nutrient timing, right? Where now once you bake the cake, now you got something to put the icing on. So now you can time. And then when you start looking at like more specific supplements and sort of unique strategies within each timing phase within that peri-workout period, those are your candles, your decorations, and all that stuff, right? So, but you got to have the fundamental cake first. There's no doubt about that. So you can't time your way out of bad diet overall for recovery. But at the same time, then once you get that ironed out, then the timing can actually be pretty useful. And I would love to play the teams that don't believe in that.
Yeah.